जॉइंट इंफॉर्मेशन ऑपरेशन को लीड करते हुए अल-कायदा और इससे जुड़े आतंकी संगठनों से लड़ने का इनिशिएटिव किया।
And the ISI.
Well, I would differ with you slightly there. The Chinese public statements were not supportive of Pakistan. Their first statement, in fact, said, we condemn this terrorism in Pahalgam. They gave us the condolences, etc. Second statement said for a stop in terms of the whole, that they should stop this fight. That was the second statement. Third, of course, what Gaurav says is right. They gave them all the assistance which had been given over the years, which was there. We knew it was there, right? It was not something new. But they also gave them live intel. That is something which we have to, in terms of imagery, etc. So that is a problem. But the fact that, what I really like in this particular SCO is they are reaching out to include all the threats which the Prime Minister has itemized in a new framework, which is going to be something like rats. They're going to have a few more verticals in these areas in terms of cyber threat, in terms of all this is going to be part of SCO. So that is a good break for us. And number three is the fact that, what the images which you said, I think what Gaurav said was right. I mean, the Prime Minister comes with this background of having sorted out Pakistan, not giving in to those completely weird threats coming from the US. That is going on, plus his Japan visit. So he's in a very, very good position now. However, there's something I'd like to say, Geeta, Maria, if you can just give me a second. Please don't, we should not equate this as a US or China issue. That is not the way it works. We have to deal with all of them side by side. So it's not either or, it is everybody together. You have to work with all these countries the best way we can.
Yes, and the messaging, let me go back to Gaurav. And Gaurav, India has simultaneously deepened ties with Japan and accelerated re-engagement, one would say, with China, if you look at it. And this is with great degree of caution. Prime Minister arrives in Tianjin after having sealed good trade ties with Japan, one of the close allies of United States. And here in China, the messaging has gone to one of the allies of China, which is Pakistan, and also to China that they did not stand with India post the terror attack in Pahalgam.
So two things. Yes, you're absolutely right about the Prime Minister's visit to Japan. We were discussing this with Dr. Tara Kartha and Ambassador Veena Sikri. This is huge. The fact that Japan is talking about investing over $60 billion in India. The fact that movement of skilled and semi-skilled labor will take place. The fact that there's cooperation from defense to strategic relationship to science and technology to space cooperation, the lunar mission exploration. Now in all of that, when India and Japan are cooperating, Japan has surplus funds, India has one talent, it has skill, it has scale, and it has the outreach. Now there's one bit of cooperation that's being talked about very extensively that some people here were a little apprehensive about during discussions, and that is the use of Japanese funds and Indian outreach in the African region. Now, this is how effectively, India traditionally is very strong all across the African region. Our engagement there historically has been strong. But to take that to the next level, you require funding. The Western Bloc often cagey with funding. That is where Japan is and could play a very critical role in the years ahead. And that again is a very effective counter mechanism to what many describe as the Belt and Road Initiative's debt trap diplomacy. That is where India comes with a clean hand. Look at what happened in Sri Lanka. Look at what happened in Maldives and how India came to the rescue both of Sri Lanka and of Maldives. Whether they realize it in the long run, Maldives Sri Lanka does realize it, Maldives perhaps in times to come. But the fact remains, India deals with countries with a very clean hand, with no ulterior motives. The aim is Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. The aim is to help. The aim is to help them grow. And this is where this cooperation and this partnership, India-Japan plays a very critical role. Then the Prime Minister comes to China, and that is where the relationship is being taken forward.
With clean hand and with a great degree of predictability and reciprocity, respect, integrity and sensitivity, as Prime Minister Modi has highlighted. Let's listen in to what the Prime Minister said at the plenary session of the SCO in Tianjin, and then I come back to the guests.
मुझे खुशी हो रही थी। हमारे शानदार स्वागत और आतिथ्य सत्कार के लिए मैं राष्ट्रपति शी का हार्दिक आभार व्यक्त करता हूं। आज उज्बेकिस्तान का इंडिपेंडेंस डे है। कल किर्गिस्तान का राष्ट्रीय दिवस था। इस अवसर पर मैं दोनों लीडर्स को बधाई और शुभकामनाएं देता हूं। एक्सेलेंसी, पिछले 24 वर्षों में SCO का पूरे यूरेशिया क्षेत्र की एक्सटेंडेड फैमिली को जोड़ने में बहुत महत्वपूर्ण योगदान रहा। भारत ने एक सक्रिय सदस्य के रूप में हमेशा कंस्ट्रक्टिव और सकारात्मक भूमिका निभाई है। SCO को लेकर भारत की सोच और नीति 3 मुख्य स्तंभों पर आधारित है। SCO, S सिक्योरिटी, C कनेक्टिविटी, O अपॉर्चुनिटी। पहले स्तंभ S यानी सिक्योरिटी के संदर्भ में मैं कहना चाहता हूं कि सुरक्षा, शांति और स्थिरता किसी भी देश के विकास का आधार है। किंतु इस मार्ग में आतंकवाद, अलगाववाद और अतिवाद बड़ी चुनौतियां हैं। आतंकवाद सिर्फ किसी देश की सुरक्षा ही नहीं, बल्कि पूरी मानवता के लिए एक साझा चुनौती है। कोई देश, कोई समाज, कोई नागरिक अपने आप को इससे सुरक्षित नहीं समझ सकता। इसलिए आतंकवाद से लड़ाई में भारत ने एकजुटता पर बल दिया। इसमें SCO रेट्स की बहुत महत्वपूर्ण भूमिका रही। इस वर्ष भारत ने जॉइंट इंफॉर्मेशन ऑपरेशन को लीड करते हुए अल-कायदा और इससे जुड़े आतंकी संगठनों से लड़ने का इनिशिएटिव किया। हमने रेडिकलाइजेशन के विरुद्ध समन्वय बढ़ाने और मिलकर कदम उठाने का भी प्रस्ताव रखा। टेरर फाइनेंसिंग के खिलाफ आवाज उठाई। इसमें मिले समर्थन के लिए मैं आभार व्यक्त करता हूं। एक्सेलेंसी, भारत पिछले 4 दशकों से निर्मम आतंकवाद का दंश झेल रहा है। कितनी ही माताओं ने अपने बच्चे खोए और कितने बच्चे अनाथ हो गए। हाल ही में हमने पहलगाम में टेररिज्म का बहुत ही घिनौना रूप देखा। इस दुख की घड़ी में जो मित्र देश हमारे साथ खड़े रहे, मैं उनका आभार व्यक्त करता हूं। यह हमला केवल भारत की अंतरात्मा पर ही आघात नहीं था, यह मानवता में विश्वास रखने वाले हर देश, हर व्यक्ति को खुली चुनौती थी। ऐसे में प्रश्न उठना स्वाभाविक है, क्या कुछ देशों द्वारा आतंकवाद का खुलेआम समर्थन हमें स्वीकार्य हो सकता है? एक्सेलेंसी, हमें स्पष्ट रूप से और एक स्वर में कहना होगा कि आतंकवाद पर कोई भी डबल स्टैंडर्ड स्वीकार्य नहीं होंगे। हमें मिलकर आतंकवाद का हर रंग में, हर रूप में विरोध करना होगा। ये मानवता के प्रति हमारा दायित्व है। एक्सेलेंसी, अब मैं दूसरे स्तंभ सी यानी कनेक्टिविटी पर अपने विचार रखना चाहूंगा। भारत का हमेशा से मत रहा है कि मजबूत कनेक्टिविटी से केवल व्यापार ही नहीं बल्कि विश्वास और विकास के द्वार भी खुलते हैं। इसी सोच के साथ हम चाबहार पोर्ट और इंटरनेशनल नॉर्थ साउथ ट्रांसपोर्ट कॉरिडोर जैसे इनिशिएटिव पर काम कर रहे हैं। इनसे हम अफगानिस्तान और मध्य एशिया के साथ संपर्क बढ़ा सकते हैं। हमारा मानना है कि कनेक्टिविटी के हर प्रयास में संप्रभुता और क्षेत्रीय अखंडता का सम्मान होना चाहिए। यही SCO चार्टर के मूल सिद्धांतों में भी विदित है। Connectivity that bypasses sovereignty, losing trust and meaning. Excellency, तीसरा स्तंभ है O, यानी opportunity. Opportunity for cooperation and reform. 2023 में भारत की अध्यक्षता के दौरान नई ऊर्जा और विचारों का संचार हुआ। स्टार्टअप और इनोवेशन, ट्रेडिशनल मेडिसिन, यूथ एम्पावरमेंट, डिजिटल इंक्लूजन और शेयर्ड बुद्धिस्ट हेरिटेज जैसे नए विषयों को अपने सहयोग में जोड़ा। हमारा प्रयास था कि SCO को सरकारों के परे भी ले जाए। सामान्य मानवी, यंग साइंटिस्ट, स्कॉलर्स और स्टार्टअप को भी आपस में जोड़े। हमारे पीपल टू पीपल टाइम को दृढ़ता देने के लिए मैं आज एक और सुझाव रखना चाहूंगा। SCO के अंतर्गत एक सिविलाइजेशन डायलॉग फोरम बनाया है। इससे हम अपनी प्राचीन सभ्यताओं, कला, साहित्य और परंपराओं को वैश्विक मंच पर साझा कर सकते हैं। एक्सेलेंसी, आज भारत रिफॉर्म, परफॉर्म, ट्रांसफॉर्म के मूल मंत्र पर आगे बढ़ रहा है। कोविड हो या वैश्विक आर्थिक अस्थिरता, हमने हर चुनौती को अवसर में बदलने का प्रयास किया है। हम लगातार वाइड रेंजिंग रिफॉर्म पर काम कर रहे हैं। इसे देश में विकास के साथ साथ अंतर्राष्ट्रीय सहयोग के लिए भी नए अवसर खुल रहे हैं। मैं आप सभी को भारत की विकास यात्रा से जुड़ने के लिए आमंत्रित करता हूं। एक्सेलेंसी, यह खुशी की बात है कि SCO भी समय के अनुरूप इवॉल्व हो रहा है। ऑर्गेनाइज्ड क्राइम, ड्रग ट्रैफिकिंग और साइबर सिक्योरिटी जैसे समकालीन चुनौतियों से निपटने के लिए 4 नए केंद्र बनाए जा रहे हैं। हम इस रिफॉर्म ओरिएंटेड माइंडसेट का स्वागत करते हैं। वैश्विक संस्थानों में रिफॉर्म्स के लिए SCO सदस्य आपसी सहयोग बढ़ा सकते हैं। संयुक्त राष्ट्र की 80वीं वर्षगांठ के अवसर पर हम एक बार होकर यूएन रिफॉर्म का आह्वान कर सकते हैं। ग्लोबल साउथ की आकांक्षाओं को आउटडेटेड फ्रेमवर्क में कैद रखना भावी पीढ़ियों के प्रति घोर अन्याय है। नई पीढ़ी के बहुरंगी सपनों को हम पुराने जमाने की ब्लैक एंड व्हाइट स्क्रीन पर नहीं दिखा सकते। स्क्रीन बदलने की होगी। SCO मल्टीलेटरलिज्म और इंक्लूसिव वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर का मार्गदर्शक बन सकता है। मुझे खुशी है कि इस महत्वपूर्ण विषय पर आज एक स्टेटमेंट जारी किया जा रहा है। एक्सेलेंसी, हम सभी पार्टनर्स के साथ समन्वय और सहयोग के साथ आगे बढ़ रहे हैं। मैं SCO
SCO stands for security, connectivity and opportunity. Prime Minister Modi's big message at the SCO summit in Tianjin. He says that terror is a big threat to peace. Goes on to say that terrorism remains a grave threat. India has called for zero tolerance against cross-border terrorism, separatism and extremism. There is a proposal certainly now for SCO-wide framework to combat terror financing and radicalization. Prime Minister Modi going on to say that there is need to address emerging threats like cyber terrorism and unmanned systems. Prime Minister mentions 22nd April Pahalgam terror attack. Goes on to say that he thanks friends for standing by India. There can be no double standards on terrorism, and that terrorism in all its forms and colors have to be condemned is the message. India also appreciates SCO's progress through RATS, which is Regional Anti-Terrorist Structure. Let me bring in Rakesh Sood, former Indian ambassador to France, who joins us. We have Namrata Hasija, research fellow with the Center for China Analysis and Strategy. Gaurav Sawant continues to be with us. Ambassador Sood, the message that is coming in from Prime Minister with China in that room in Tianjin is that, and of course, Pakistan, no double standards on terrorism. Let's not forget the stand that was taken by China during Operation Sindoor.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm afraid having been a diplomat and having been involved in drafting speeches for more than 3 decades, the idea of SCO now standing for security, connectivity, and opportunity, I mean, we've seen these abbreviations being used at the drop of a hat. So this is not something that particularly is reassuring. But as you very rightly pointed out, the question is that what are our long-term interests in the sense with China, and whether those concerns have been addressed or not. You mentioned Op Sindoor, and we saw the kind of active cooperation which the Air Force has publicly said existed during the conduct of Op Sindoor. Secondly, we also saw, you mentioned RATS, but we also saw that the previous statement at the defense minister's level of the SCO, which took place barely a month ago.
That's right.
We had to dissociate ourselves because we were dissatisfied with the reference to Pahalgam and terrorism. So we'll have to wait and see what this is going to yield. Summitry is all very well, but summitry has to have a lot of serious work behind it to be able to judge as to what the long-term implications are.
Okay, Namrata, your takeaway? You'll have to unmute yourself. We also have Shrikant joining us. He's a professor in Chinese studies at Jawaharlal Nehru University here in the national capital. Go ahead, Namrata.
Yes, I would agree with sir. I think he's very rightly pointed out that SCO has the biggest perpetrator of terrorism, which is Pakistan. The victim here, India. We have seen that in the last meet also, that Pahalgam was not mentioned, and it was, they did mention Baluchistan attack. So we cannot really. And also the recent article that has been published by Liu Zhonghe, when everything is happening at SCO, calling India an internal cancer to SCO. This is not the first time that Chinese have raised their doubt about India being part of the SCO. And this article, especially, I'm pointing out because it was published 2 days back when everything was happening at the SCO. So also, when it comes to the larger India-China ties, I think we should not really jump to conclusions by saying it's a reset, it's a historic meet. It is what it is. It took a lot of effort, diplomatic effort, to get where we are. And also this rhetoric that I'm hearing, it is because of Trump tariffs that this has happened. Let's not give Trump credit for something that is he doesn't deserve. It's not because of the tariffs. It was 9 months before that we reached a disengagement agreement at two Depsang and Demchok, and it has been a very long drawn process. At least right after Galwan, there have been multiple level of meetings between India and China, and an effort was put into this, that we have seen this meeting. And also, this is not a bilateral. This is on the sidelines of a multilateral organization. So let's take one step at a time and not really, go into all these rhetorics and call it as a reset in India-China ties.
A great degree of caution here coming in from Namrata. Professor Srikanth, your reading. Professor Srikanth, if you can hear me. Okay. Okay, we'll try and fix that line with Professor Srikanth. But Gaurav Sawant, as you report for us from Tianjin, no double standards on terrorism. Terrorism in all its forms and colors have to be condemned is the message coming in from the Prime Minister.
You know, all India can do is state facts in public domain. Beyond that, India can only expect the world to act in good faith. But do we see that happening? Clearly not. The fact that a victim of terror and a state sponsor of radical Islamist terror are on the same platform, do we see Shahbaz Sharif squirm here when cross-border terrorism is called out, or when Pahalgam terror is mentioned? No, Pakistan has been rather shameless about this. Globally, Pakistan is known as a sponsor of Islamist terror and radical Islamist terror. From Madeleine Albright calling it an international headache and a migraine, to others saying it's global terror epicenter, terror central. All of these have been words used by the West in the past. But what's happening now? Asim Munir is on the high table with Donald Trump. Donald Trump is looking after his personal interests, or whatever interests he thinks he can best meet, whether it's a cryptocurrency deal, a mining deal in Baluchistan, an attempt to wean away Pakistan from China. We do not know what are games at play between America and China, but American double standards are there for all to see. The Chinese double standards have been there for all to see for decades. But what is India's principal concern? One, highlight ground realities. India has raised the issue not just of cross-border terrorism, sought a mechanism to deal with it. India is also talking about territorial integrity. When we talk about connectivity, it's more than just words. Connectivity, when you talk about Chabahar, North-South corridor, it's a counter to the Belt and Road initiative from our side to say it's a violation of India's territorial integrity where it goes through Pakistan occupied Jammu and Kashmir, which is a part of Indian territory. India on our own with other partners is working on the India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor. So that is an alternate route, but something that was agreed to during India's G20 presidency with Biden as president. Will Donald Trump take it forward? When we are having, issues with tariff with Donald Trump? Again, that remains to be seen. India-Japan is that big story, according to me, that comes out of the Prime Minister's visit. Absolutely. Nobody is celebrating the Prime Minister's China visit. Nobody is calling it a reset. It's just being looked at exactly the way it is. one more attempt. Will it be a false start? We've had several false starts in the past. We've all reported what happened in 2014 in Ahmedabad, Wuhan, Mahabalipuram. We've reported it all. We're only reporting what's happening on ground. Another attempt being made to bring the relationship on an even keel to ensure our economy can do better. And that's why one of India's principal efforts is also to seek greater access to Chinese markets. That was raised between Wang Yi and India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval in their talks in August, that this has strategic ramifications for India if the trade imbalance reaches $100 billion.
Yes, it's about strategic convergences, if we may say, and some kind of re-engagement which is happening here. Professor Srikanth, your thoughts on Prime Minister Modi's comments at the plenary?
Thank you for having me on the show. I think the Prime Minister raised the fundamental issues concerned to the Indian vision as well as security. There is the mention about connectivity and the INSTC and IMEC related. He also mentioned about the sovereignty aspects that need to be taken care of in this regard. Secondly, there is the specific mention about Pahalgam, which indicates that there is the China-Pakistan role in this. Remember, one of the terrorists on April 22nd was sending messages through the Huawei phone and Peito series of satellite connections. So there is that Chinese connection there. Also, Li Changqie, the Chinese representative at the Geneva meeting on the 1267 committee, he had removed, along with the Pakistani representative, removed the resistance front name and included the BLA and Majid Brigade. In the meetings that Raksha Mantri Rajnath Singh and External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar had in the SCO Defense and Foreign Ministerial meeting, they have mentioned about these as well. And the draft resolutions did not include the Indian position. Which indicates that the Prime Minister has to very explicitly mention this, because none of this is going to be part of the joint statement of the SCO, because the host has that prerogative. And as it happened in Qingdao meeting of the SCO 5 years ago, there is likely to be no mention of the Indian position in the final draft resolution of the SCO meeting today.
Okay. In fact, there is a piece of breaking news that is coming in now. At the Shanghai Cooperation Council meeting, in the members session in Tianjin, Russian President Vladimir Putin has said, and I quote him, "I appreciate China and India's efforts to resolve the crisis in Ukraine." This is coming at a time when Donald Trump's key advisor, Peter Navarro, has said that this is India's war, Modi's war. Geeta.
Absolutely. The Russian side, Maria, understands the importance and the important role India has played, not just in terms of how that it stood by Russia, that it bought Russian oil at a time when Russian economy was on a verge of collapse. It did not do it out of its own volition alone, that the Europeans needed it, refined oil and sent it to Europe. And as much as Donald Trump would not want to believe it, India has had a role to play in being the peacemaker, engaging Putin and engaging Zelensky at various times to talk about dialogue and diplomacy, and yet not funding the war. So this certainly is not Modi's war. That message comes from none other than Vladimir Putin himself.
Yes, that's right. So Ambassador Sood, India and China say that they are partners, not rivals. And now Vladimir Putin, in his opening statement, has said that he really welcomes India's efforts to resolve the crisis.
Well, I think I would tend to share Namrata's caution about whether we have put India-China rivalry to rest. What has China been doing in India's neighborhood? Have those issues been resolved? I thought we have had considerable concerns about the growing Chinese presence in South Asia and in the Indian Ocean. We have also had growing concerns about the mega dam that China is building, on which, if I remember right, during Wang Yi's visit, what was agreed was that in case there is a crisis, then China will share some hydrological data. Regular exchange of hydrological data has not been accepted by China. We also have not seen any moves by China with regard to the addressing the a trade deficit, which has been a source of considerable concern for us. And let me also remind that what has happened is we had asked earlier that we wanted a return to status quo ante of April 2020. We have not seen that. What we saw last year, the completion, which was marked with the meeting between Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Modi at Kazan, was the disengagement, not de-escalation.
That's right.
There was no retreat of the soldiers who had gone to the line of actual control, coming back to their peacetime locations, and that situation still continues. So I don't see how we can now switch our description from rivalry to partnership or anything like that.
Okay, so there's cautious optimism, I would say here, which is happening. Professor Shrikant, how do you look at Vladimir Putin's Russian president's statement? He has reiterated Moscow's position that attempts by the West to drag Ukraine into NATO are one of the causes of the crisis in Ukraine.
Well, as you know, the Indian and Chinese positions have been neutral, relatively positive towards Russia, but neutral in essence. And this has been reiterated in the UN General Assembly and other fora by the Indian representatives. So still it is good for Russia because in terms of the international isolation that Russia faced in the past 3 years, the neutrality position of India and China still will be conducive for the Russian interests. And in the background of the energy supplies from Russia to both China and India, there is a positiveness towards Russia in this whole conflict. The Indian side has not criticized Russia, nor the Chinese, and so that is a big gain for Russia in terms of the international isolation that it faced and sanctions it faced from the West, Europe and the United States. So from that point of view, I think President Putin's statement is quite appropriate and also in line with what Premier Primakov had mentioned in 1998 about multipolarity. And since then, there has been a number of summit-level meetings as well as foreign ministerial meeting between Russia, India, and China. And this has also diversified into BRICS, SCO, and other multilateral institutions which stood for multipolarity. So I think he was trying to put that in context of the Russian help that India and China were able to extend indirectly. There is no material support from India in any format. India has not supplied any arms. In fact, India had imported arms from Russia instead of contributing to the Ukrainian front. On the other hand, of course, the Chinese have supplied some arms or systems, especially drone technologies, electronic warfare equipment, satellite space photographs for the Ukrainian theater, and other systems. But India had not supplied anything for Russia. So the statement from the US that India contributed to the Ukrainian conflict, I think that is...
Okay. Geeta, where do we, is this several steps backwards or few steps ahead? What happens to that understanding which was reached? Of course, there were no outcomes per se at the Alaska summit.
Well, if you're talking about Russia and the peace process, there's an understanding for now the two leaders to meet, Maria. Unless and until Russia, Ukraine, the presidents, the leadership meets, there can be no forward movement. President Trump might want and wish a peace between the two countries as much as he wants, but the two leaders have to decide on what is it that they want to do. But look, President Putin has been very clear. The White House and the Russian president are speaking in one voice when it comes to Europe. They've cornered Europe, saying that it's Europe that is prolonging the war and does not want it to end. They're still arming Ukraine against Russia instead of pushing them to the negotiating table. The next meeting is yet to happen. But Maria, I have to add what Dr. Tara Kartha had said earlier, that China has not ever come out like all the other experts are saying, they've completely gone out and supported Pakistan in that entire war or conflict or operation and post-operation conflict with Pakistan, post-Operation Sindoor. Apart from that, the Chinese foreign minister, in no uncertain terms, on May 20th, when a question was asked about India and Pahalgam terror attack, said that Pakistan is defending national sovereignty and territorial integrity, and that China will stand by Pakistan. That's an official statement of the Chinese foreign minister. So let's not make any mistake or be in disillusion that China suddenly will not support its ironclad friendship with Pakistan and secure it. That certainly is not going to happen anytime soon.
Okay, Namrata, how do you look at Vladimir Putin's statement with regards to NATO and the role of NATO?
See, when I differ a bit in the sense that I don't think India and China's position is the same when it comes to, the Ukraine war, because China has, openly supported, Russia when it comes to the Ukraine war, whereas India has criticized the war. It has Prime Minister Modi has very openly said that this is not a time for war. So even internally, if you see in the Chinese in Chinese system, there were like 5 university professors who had written letters saying that we should not support this war that Russia has started with the Ukraine. And yes, Putin's statement welcoming India and China in the efforts, that is fine from a Russian perspective, right? And that is what India has been attempting when it comes to talking to Zelensky and talking to Russia about the war. And I think Russia's biggest fear, of course, was that Ukraine will be joining NATO. Now, when it comes to Europe, I think it's not just India that you see these statements coming from President Trump. He's in fact made very strong statements when it comes to Europe and also NATO. Like he said that everybody has to, contribute when it comes to, security. And then second thing is, to me, what I'm looking at when you guys are discussing about, Trump, that he's actually antagonized all the countries that actually stood up to, the Chinese. And somewhere down the line, this is because he wants a deal with President Xi Jinping. And you look at and it's not just India, look at what they have done with the Japanese. They have gone back, they decided the tariffs and then he went back. Then Philippines, then Taiwan, they have totally thrown under the bus, Vietnam, India. So to me, I think when it comes to this, Xi Jinping really wants a deal, Trump really wants a deal with Xi Jinping. And this whole RIC business also that we are listening, I don't think India should think about RIC right now. It will be that we'll be placing all our eggs in the same basket if we do that.
Yes.
So to me, these optics, to me, it's just different, then I don't know.
Absolutely. Disagreements are always welcome, ma'am. Would you then say, Professor Srikanth, that this is about Tokyo, Tianjin? India will be clubbing the outcomes as that, because Prime Minister Modi arrived in Tianjin after a very successful visit with the Japanese.
I think we are learning from the Chinese practice. Whenever a Chinese president premier visits India, he invariably lands in Islamabad or any other South Asian country like Dhaka when Wen Jiabao, Premier Wen Jiabao came in 2005. President Jiang Zemin came to India and went to Islamabad and addressed their Senate. Likewise, when Wang Yi came last week or 2 weeks ago, he went to both Kabul and Islamabad.
Yes.
So there is that balancing that China practice. So I think we are learning from this process. Prime Minister Modi visited Mongolia during his visit to Beijing in 2015. So we are also now sending signals that we can also balance. As the fourth largest economy in the world, we can balance China by these visits. And most important, I think we have some concrete achievements during the Tokyo visit. For example, the Shinkansen R&D, to be transferred to India. $65 billion of investment that Japan promised, in addition to the $120 billion that they have already put on table before. And when we look at the China-India connection, the total Chinese investment in India is just about $8.2 billion. So we know who will contribute to India's rise, and hence the priority given to Japan in this context. But I also wanted to say other things in the Prime Minister's speech. As we hosted the SCO meeting a couple of years ago, we mentioned about startups and DPI, the digital public infrastructure. This was reiterated by the PM. This is very significant because in the overall speech, he mentioned about reform, perform, and transform, which basically would mean that we are focusing on economic growth rates, and SEO also need to look at these economic growth rates from the point of view of the startups.
And if I may add, what he said towards the end or latter part of his speech, where he invited the SCO nations to join in India's growth story. He said, India is on the path of economic development. Please join us, is the message also. Yes, go ahead, Professor Srikanth. Finish your point, sir.
Yes, in the context of the SCO, because many SCO members are actually authoritarian states, there is hardly any democracy in these states, many states. So the mention about the startups is a bottom-up approach rather than top-down approach that many SEO states practice in terms of their economic development. That is, big companies, the state-owned enterprises in the lead in many of the SEO countries. So the startups would provide for a bottom-up approach and a democratic approach. So the Indian position, I think, is to be noted in the context of the economic growth rate, as well as by emphasizing on the startups. When India was the chair of the SCO a couple of years ago, India also mentioned about the Buddhism and tourist related activities related to Buddhist circuits. The Eurasian states are, of course, known for Buddhism, and so India is bringing this factor in the chairpersonship of the SCO before. And that is, I think, quite unique to the Indian stance, which is generally ignored in the overall, dynamics of the SEO. Okay. So I think these two are very important, including the DPI.
Absolutely. The points that have been made here by Professor Srikanth. Take that thread ahead, Geeta. What about the Tianjin Declaration? Because, details of Tianjin Declaration has now started coming in. We have the details now. The SCO members strongly condemn Pahalgam attack. That's a huge achievement that will be seen by India. Geeta, give us the details.
Well, that's right. But look, the statement has put, again, like I said, India and Pakistan being clubbed together. Pahalgam terror attack as well as Jafar Express attack, both have been mentioned in the SCO summit, in the SCO declaration. This is huge. But the fact that India got its condemnation of the Pahalgam terror attack in is significant. Not like any of the countries had not condemned the attack. Pahalgam terror attack was very strongly condemned by China as well. So condemnation, yes, but the statement has clubbed India and Pakistan. There's condemnation of the Pahalgam terror attack as also Pakistan's Jafar Express attack. So terrorism and the fact that a paragraph just before that speaks about no double standards when it comes to terrorism. That terrorism of all kinds should be completely rejected and fought, and that separatism, terrorism, and extremism, as well as illicit trafficking, all of them, transnational organized crime, all of them should be jointly combated and fought against. A strong statement there on terrorism in the SCO. Pahalgam terror attack condemned. So has Pakistan's Jafar Express attack been condemned.
A word now, because I'm going through the statement, Geeta. It is looking at multiple aspects as was expected. The member states have spoken about sustainable international peace, and they have called for joint efforts to counter traditional and new security challenges and threats. Member states reaffirm their determination to continue the joint fight against terrorism, separatism, and extremism. And they have gone ahead and spoken. I think that the stress on double standards in the fight against terrorism are unacceptable. So Prime Minister's words, what Prime Minister Modi said, that double standards is unacceptable, it has been incorporated here. And the member states, I'm quoting a part of this Tianjin declaration, Ambassador Sood, it says the member states strongly condemn terrorism in all its forms and manifestations, stress that double standards in the fight against terrorism are unacceptable, and they call on the international community to combat terrorism, including cross-border movement of terrorists, with the central role of the UN by implementing the relevant UN Security Council resolution and the UN Global Counter-Terrorism Strategy in accordance with the UN Charter and the principles of international law in order to jointly combat all terrorist organizations. Go ahead, sir, analyze this point about counter-terrorism and cross-border terrorism, which has been incorporated now. Is this a continuity in the SCO declaration, or are you seeing some kind of emphasis?
I am not seeing anything new in this declaration. Let me remind you that after the Pahalgam attack, all countries categorically condemned the Pahalgam terrorist attack, yes, including China. However, the difference comes because many of them also suggested that there should be an international body to investigate as to who was to blame. Now, that's where the difference comes in. It is after we blamed Pakistan and took military action against Pakistan that the same countries that had condemned the Pahalgam attack were also urging restraint on India. So therefore, I don't see anything new in this. Our problem is specific to Pakistan, and I think it has been amply brought out by both Geeta and by the other panelists.
Yes. Go ahead, Namrata.
Nothing new. I think also, let me remind you that after the Pahalgam attack, President Xi Jinping, going away from prior, instances, he didn't even send a condolence message. So, and also, this thing of clubbing India and Pakistan in one breath in the same, statement, I don't think, we should really look at it as something new or something that is, now an achievement. So the last one didn't mention Pahalgam, this one mentioned Pahalgam, but with the Balochistan attack. So I don't see anything new here. And again, like I said, SCO is giving platform to Pakistan, that India has been condemning again and again the terrorist attacks that we are having from Pakistan. So I don't see anything new here.
Okay, let me bring in Professor Srikanth.
I think on this issue, there is an incremental progress that we need to really watch for. But the proof of the pudding is in eating. So we need to see what the 1267 committee, the positions of Pakistan and China in regard to the cross-border terrorism. While it has been mentioned that there is a watering down of the resolution, joint statement, but we need to see how this is going to pan out in the 1267 committee of the United Nations Security Council, the Al-Qaeda committee. For instance, on Zakirul Rahman, Masood Azhar, and other terrorists based in Pakistan, China provided an indirect support by blocking the Indian suggestions for banning them or bringing in into the 1267 committee. However, they have agreed after a series of 9 or 10 years of discussions with the Chinese. So there has been the Chinese acceptance of this, reluctantly though, but they have been able to do that. So I think it is an incremental progress, but we need to watch how it is going to affect the 1267 committee and the international actual campaign against terrorism. Will that be watered down as well as the Chinese did for 9 years on Masood Azhar and others? Or will there be real action in terms of the 1267 committee provisions regarding counterterrorism? So there is, in the light of course, the Pakistan-US relations improving, I think this is a good beginning in terms of including Pahalgam in the statement.
Yes.
Previously, there was no mention about it.
Yes, so this time the statement is, member states strongly condemn the terrorist attack in Pahalgam on April 22nd, 2025. It also goes on to say that member states strongly condemn terrorism in all its forms and manifestations, something that Prime Minister Modi spoke about in his address at the plenary. He also said, spoke about double standards, that there should be no double standards on terrorism. The SCO declaration, which is the Tianjin declaration, has said and stressed that double standards in the fight against terrorism are unacceptable. They have called on the international community to combat terrorism, including cross-border movement of terrorists. Geeta, yes, you have spoken about Jafar Express incident and Kuzdar of 21st May. But this condemnation with regards to Pahalgam, April 22nd, it has happened. I mean, most countries stood with India, barring China, who have gone on to say that this, Pahalgam terror attack must be condemned, something that Prime Minister spoke about today. He also spoke about it immediately after the Pahalgam terror attack. Now that it has been incorporated in the Tianjin declaration, do you see this as a victory for India?
Well, it's a significant one, Maria, but let's be very real. One is that China did not support India, supported Pakistan in the entire also the operation, but China did condemn the Pahalgam terror attack, and very, very strongly so. Any kind of terrorist attack that takes place is condemned by China, but they did also very strongly condemn the Jafar Express attack. And who did? Then General and now Field Marshal Asim Munir. Who did he stand up and blame? Who did the Pakistani army spokesperson stand up and blame when that entire press conference took place? They squarely blamed India. And after officially blaming India, like India officially talks about how Pahalgam terror attack has been was Pakistan's doing, the SCO comes together to put that in the joint statement as well. So in a way, while we are looking at the fact that the Pahalgam terror attack has been recognized, condemned by all, which was anyway done by individually by every country, Jafar Express being there, again, a terror attack also goes to show that Pakistan has played that card of, I'm also a victim of terror, not realizing that we are not the ones who create the problems in Pakistan. It's Pakistan's own doing, because of which Pakistan today suffers. But they themselves have now started playing the victim card, and that is a problem for us.
One more sentence in this Tianjin declaration, Geeta, and Wayne. They further stated that perpetrators, organizers, and sponsors of such attacks must be brought to justice. I remember what Prime Minister Modi said soon after the terror attack in Pahalgam on 22nd April. He had gone on to say that India will trace, track and neutralize every terrorist, their handlers and perpetrators to the end of the earth.
Absolutely. And that is a message that was sent across all through. You see, SCO declaration is not discussed during the leadership meeting. It is already discussed, detailed out by the officials who are working on the draft. And then there's a massive to and fro that goes on between the SCO secretariat, the officials who are there, and the respective headquarters that are the capitals. So it was all decided on what needs to be there. And the Indian side very clearly spoke about no double standards and the need to combat terrorism. The Prime Minister and the Indian administration making it very clear that their intent is clear. Should India be attacked? And this is a change in how, and a shift, a huge shift in India's policy. Should India be attacked, that the country where those terrorists come from will have to suffer the consequences. Operation Sindoor was an example, and also a major statement in that policy shift that India has made. Never had India ever entered the Punjab since the war, but they did enter the Punjab in Pakistan and took out the terrorist infrastructure there. Pakistan may want to say what it does, but that's the message and that's what they wanted to be conveyed in this statement as well. But nothing new over here in terms of the conveying of this message against terrorism, Maria. Every SCO summit, every declaration has the intent on paper, penciled down, that they intend to fight terrorism and combat terrorism, that there should be no double standards. That's a standard line of China, in fact, rather than any other country, that there should be no double standards. Over here, condemnation has come in. But again, when it comes to real action, we do know that individual countries will carry their own country interests rather than the bloc. Therefore, SCO still is far from being a cohesive bloc where everybody is aligned.
Okay. Far from being a cohesive bloc where everybody is aligned. Ambassador Sood, we certainly did not expect Pakistan to be aligned with India.
Quite right. But I think, as Geeta pointed out, that this is the universal condemnation of terrorism is nothing new. In fact, SCO has had the grouping of the subgroup of RATS, the regional anti-terrorism thing, where we have joint exercises where Pakistan is also involved. So what does that mean? I think the key point that you seem to be losing in this is the fact that both Pakistan and India are treated at par. I mean, if this program was taking place on a Pakistani news channel, then I'm afraid they would all be celebrating the fact that the terror attack in Pakistan has been included in the same manner in which Pahalgam has been included. So they would be calling it a victory for Shahbaz Sharif. So I don't think we should get carried away merely because Pahalgam has been mentioned. The fact is that both have been mentioned, and that both, in our view, Pakistan is the perpetrator. We are the victim. And so in that sense, I don't see that we have scored any significant victory, or there is that alignment or anything like that. And if I go back to Op Sindoor, which you referred to in the beginning, I think not just China, but you also had Turkish leader there. And we know the role that Turkey played in providing drones. We also had the Azerbaijan leader there, and we saw the statements that came out of Azerbaijan. So I don't see how we are looking at alignment with the countries with which we have had significant differences on a matter of vital national security interest.
Point taken here. Namrata Hasija, let's start wrapping up this discussion. And as we bring in new guests in 15 minutes from now, your thoughts on the Tianjin declaration as we wait for the first set of visuals to come in now of Prime Minister Modi's bilateral with Vladimir Putin.
I actually belong to the school where I feel that SCO is just on paper. It's an organization that we have joined, but I think Ambassador Sood and Geeta brought out very significantly that the declaration has nothing new for India. They have again they have placed India and Pakistan on the same this thing. And even if the weakest, to me, the strongest argument that India has, that why we are part of the SCO, to have that connect with the Central Asian country, to me is the weakest, because we can do it on our own. We don't need SCO as a platform to engage with Central Asia. And then when it comes to connectivity, what connectivity are we talking about? Like, there is Pakistan there. I mean, and we know CPEC, we know the connection that is going to come in. It is going to come in through there. So what are we talking about? So for me, it's okay, we are there in the SCO, but it's not going to give any significant results, takeaways, or victories for India when it comes to this SCO summit or any other SCO summit.
Okay, let me wrap this up with Geeta Mohan. Geeta, now it will be about that crucial bilateral with Vladimir Putin. This coming at a time when Peter Navarro says that this is Modi's war, and he has gone on to make more outrageous statements.
Well, absolutely. This is I was saying this earlier as well, Maria. SCO, like Namrata says, very, very rightly so, it is not a cohesive bloc, so you can only expect that much. A declaration, maybe some exercises, but beyond that, we will not see countries walk the talk in terms of really standing by each other, because they are not aligned, that their interests lie elsewhere, especially when India and Pakistan are in the room. India has tried very hard to dehyphenate from Pakistan, but every time in the recent past that we are seeing, there's more hyphenation happening than dehyphenation. This condemnation is an example of how India and Pakistan have been clubbed in the same category, even in condemnation. Having said that, one has to look forward to what is one of the most important things that's going to happen in Tianjin. It's not the India-China bilateral, it's the India-Russia bilateral. Russian President Vladimir Putin, during his opening remarks, has already said that he is going to explain to the leaders what happened in the Alaska summit, when he personally meets them for bilateral meetings. He had already spoken to Prime Minister Modi after he returned to Moscow, but then this is going to be a more detailed meeting about what's happening on the ground, how India is having to suffer for having the ties that it does with Russia, for having stood by Russia. So there's a lot of, in a way, importance that Russia is attaching to India and this relationship. So this is going to be a very important one, important outcomes in terms of how they're going to move forward.
Yes, and this is coming after the Alaska summit. This bilateral face-to-face meeting between Vladimir Putin and Prime Minister Modi comes in the backdrop of that call that happened between President Zelensky and Prime Minister Modi also. So these developments also will be kept in mind when that interaction happens between the two heads of states. Geeta.
Absolutely. All of this will be kept in mind, Maria. Every geopolitical maneuvering and move that we've seen in the recent past, whether if it is Donald Trump and his actions against India, the kind of statements that we're seeing from White House, the kind of statements that have been made against or for Russia, Europe's involvement in Ukraine war, and how India did help.
Okay, Geeta, hold on to your thoughts, because we have the first set of picture, which is actually showing that President Putin and Prime Minister Modi have traveled in the same car to their destination, to the destination of their bilateral meeting. We have that image, Geeta. Go ahead, complete your point, and then I'll put that image on our television screens.
Okay, so the meeting that is going to take place is not going to take place at the SCO summit venue.
Yes.
This is a very personal, and that's what you see in this photograph that you're seeing. Prime Minister Modi and President Putin traveling the same car to President Putin's hotel, that's Ritz-Carlton, which is where the meeting is going to take place. And that's why the delay. It was to start at 9:30. It didn't start. A lot of news channels and media houses speculated and preempted, saying that it had started. We were told the meeting has not started. SCO declaration is out, and now the leaders are moving and are on their way to Ritz-Carlton. In moments from now, you'll also be getting the first pictures of the two leaders shaking hands with the delegation, and then the delegation level meeting will begin. So this is the first image of a meeting that is to take place in moments from now.
Yes, and there's a lot of personal bonhomie that we have seen. The personal chemistry between the two leaders is well known here. Geeta, we have that image on our screens. Let's go full frame with that picture that we have now of Prime Minister Modi and Russian President Vladimir Putin, who are now traveling in the same car to the destination of their bilateral meeting. This bilateral meeting is of very important nature, given how significant it is, given the backdrop of India being punished, punitive tariffs, almost 25% being imposed on India because India bought crude oil from Russia. Prime Minister Modi essentially highlighting, the two leaders choosing to highlight and tell the West that this is an all-weather friendship here, Geeta, a friendship which has weathered many storms, and how Russia and India have stood firmly with each other.
Well, on a lighter note, Maria, it's like the two leaders are carpooling, saying, okay, we have to go to the same destination, might as well sit in one car. And
that's a good way of analyzing it, actually.
And they're headed to Ritz-Carlton, which is where they're going to hold that meeting. But this picture was taken just moments ago. So in some time, you will be seeing the first pictures come of the big meeting between President Putin and Prime Minister Narendra Modi. This is significant. It's going to be a very important one, like I have been saying it, because this comes after all the backlash that India has received from the White House, from President Trump, for having bought Russian oil at the time when Russia really needed a friend. India stood by Russia, India stood by President Putin. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see what comes of this meeting and how they're looking at resolving this entire crisis. One important way of resolving the crisis, Maria, again, would be if President Putin and President Zelensky come to the talking table, negotiate terms and conditions, and find peace, lasting peace, not temporary ceasefire, because that's the only way that President Trump will then have the honor of having actually mediated a peace between two countries, rather than the one that he claims to have, which is India-Pakistan. But he'd actually have the honor of having mediated peace between two very important countries that have been fighting for a very, very long time. This war did not begin with the operation or the invasion of Russia into Ukraine recently. It is long before that when America continued